My name is Doris Young, but most people call me Dory. I'm 32, a freelance designer, and apparently, according to my family, the independent one. That word always sounds flattering until you realize it's their polite way of saying expendable. It started with a text from my sister Danielle. Come by for a casual family brunch on Sunday. We'll squeeze you in. That smiley face should have been a warning. I hadn't heard from her in months, but suddenly she wanted me there, like she was doing me a favor. Evan, my boyfriend, glanced at the message while making coffee. You sure you want to go? It's just brunch, I said, shrugging. But even then, something in my chest tightened. It's never just brunch with my family. It's an unspoken performance, a hierarchy disguised as hospitality. Sunday came bright and sunny, the kind of morning that makes you think maybe, just maybe, it'll be different this time. I arrived 10 minutes early, thinking I'd help them settle in. But when I walked into the restaurant, my hope evaporated. There they were, already seated around a long table, plates half eaten, mimosas half drunk, laughter echoing like I'd shown up to someone else's celebration. 9 seats, 9 plates, no room for me. Danielle didn't even look up from her drink. My brother Nate gave me the quickest nod, then went right back to bragging about his new project. It was Mom who finally acknowledged me, smiling with that patronizing warmth she's perfected over the years. Oh, Doris, we didn't think you'd actually come, she said, waving vaguely toward the bar. That seat over there's fine for you, right? The seat over there was a lonely bar stool in the corner beside a tray of dirty glasses. For a second, I just stood there, frozen, embarrassed, pretending it didn't sting. Then I smiled politely, walked over, and sat down. From that little island of isolation, I had a perfect view of them. Danielle tossing her hair back, laughing too loud at something Nate said, Dad gesturing with his fork as he told one of his endless stories. They looked like a portrait of family. I looked like the waitress who'd lingered too long. I ordered a latte and watched as they ordered another bottle of Prosecco. Danielle's husband, Luke, raised it high like he was hosting a wedding toast. The server laughed along. Their world didn't even have space for me, and yet somehow I was the one expected to keep showing up, smiling, and paying my share. That's when something inside me shifted. Not anger, not bitterness, just a clean, sharp awareness. They'll never see me differently unless I make them. The server passed by, and I caught her eye. Could I close out, please? She handed me the small receipt, $5.75 for my latte. I smiled and said quietly, Actually, could you move the rest of Table 7's charges onto this card? She blinked, confused. All of them? Every last drop of Prosecco. I didn't flinch, didn't smirk, just handed her my card. When the transaction had processed, I stood, left my half-finished latte on the counter, and walked out. No dramatic exit, no slammed door, just silence and sunlight and the sound of my own heels on the pavement. Halfway home, my phone buzzed. Nate. Doris, what the hell? Someone just dropped the entire tab on my card. Over $1,300. Danielle's screaming. Mom's crying. What did you do? I stared at the message for a long moment, then turned my phone face down. I wasn't trying to humiliate them. I wasn't trying to get even. I just wanted them to feel, for once, what it's like to be the one left standing. Awkward, invisible, and paying for everyone else's comfort. That night, I sat on the porch with Evan, sipping tea under the amber porch light. He listened as I told him what happened, his brow furrowed, then softened. You didn't overreact, he said finally. You just stopped pretending. His words landed heavier than I expected. For years, I'd convinced myself that keeping the peace was strength, that staying quiet made me mature. But maybe silence isn't grace. Maybe it's just a slow way to disappear. The next morning, my phone was a graveyard of missed calls. Mom, Nate, even Danielle. Their voicemails sounded like rehearsed outrage. Doris, we need to talk about your behavior yesterday. You embarrassed your brother in public. You went too far. I deleted them all. At 9:46 a.m., the doorbell rang. Evan looked out the window, sighed. It's her, Danielle. Flawless hair, designer sunglasses, holding an iced coffee from that overpriced cafe she only visits when she wants to seem unbothered. Just don't open it, Evan murmured. But I did, because that's who I've always been, the one who still tries. She walked in without asking, the scent of her perfume slicing through the air like static. I covered that entire tab yesterday, she announced, standing in the middle of my living room like she owned it. Over $1,300. You want to explain what that was about? I said nothing. I didn't have to, but I did because I don't make scenes. I don't ruin family events. Her tone dripped superiority, like she expected me to thank her for cleaning up my mess. I leaned against the wall and crossed my arms. You done? Her eyes narrowed. You've really changed. You used to be so chill. Now you're bitter. Before I could reply, Evan came in from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. No, Danielle, she's not bitter. She's just tired. Tired of paying for people who treat her like a stranger. Danielle blinked, startled. Excuse me, I'm not talking to you. Then hear me out before you leave, Evan cut in calmly. The house you're living in? Doris owns it. She's paid your rent, your utilities, your property taxes for almost 2 years. You've never even said thank you. Her mouth fell open, but no words came out. Evan's voice stayed even. You don't get to call her selfish for setting boundaries you've never respected. Danielle's cheeks flushed crimson. She turned toward me, voice trembling with fury. You told him about that? No, I said quietly. He found out because I was stressed out trying to figure out how to keep covering for you. For a heartbeat, the room was silent. Then Danielle scoffed. You know what? Keep your charity. We'll figure it out ourselves. She stormed towards the door, her iced coffee sloshing in her hand. Before she left, she threw one last line over her shoulder. You think you're better than us now, huh? The door slammed. The sound echoed through the quiet house. Evan exhaled slowly. That's the last time she walks in here like that. I nodded. My heart felt like it was beating from 2 directions, anger and relief. That night, I opened my laptop, drafted a simple email to the property manager. Effective immediately, my financial support for the tenants at 42 Birchwood Lane is ending. Please issue a 14-day notice to vacate. No extensions, no exceptions. I hovered over send for a long minute, then I clicked. The soft whoosh of that outgoing email sounded like freedom. The email was sent. I thought that would be the end of it, that once the decision was made, the noise would fade. But silence has a way of turning into something heavier than shouting. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up to a text from Danielle asking for something. No, can you cover the water bill this month? No, Luke's between projects again. We'll catch up soon. Just nothing. By noon, the nothingness broke. My phone lit up with 3 back-to-back calls. Mom, Nate, Danielle. Then came the voicemails. Doris, call me back. We need to talk about this house thing. You're overreacting. There are kids involved. If this is about the brunch, you're being ridiculous. I deleted each one as it came. Every word sounded like a trap, baited with guilt. Evan watched me from across the kitchen counter, flipping pancakes like it was just another morning. You okay? They'll twist this into something ugly, I said quietly. They always do. He nodded, sliding a plate toward me. Then don't give them an audience. I tried to eat. I really did. But my stomach churned. Every bite felt like guilt I hadn't earned. By late afternoon, I'd convinced myself maybe this would settle down in a few days. That was when Mom's text came through. Your sister says she and Luke are packing. Please, Doris, don't make this permanent. Family sticks together. Family sticks together. The same phrase she used when I loaned Danielle $10,000 for a temporary rough patch. The same phrase when Luke quit his job to focus on freelance work that never existed. It always meant one thing. You fix it because you're the responsible one. I typed a reply, deleted it, typed again, deleted it. At 6:12 p.m., the doorbell rang. Again. Evan and I exchanged a look. Let me guess, he said, wiping his hands. Round 2. I peered through the window. Danielle stood on the porch, hair disheveled this time, eyes red, a tote bag hanging from her shoulder. Her car was idling in the driveway, her 2 kids visible in the back seat. Don't, Evan warned gently. I have to, I whispered. When I opened the door, Danielle didn't wait for an invitation. She walked in like it was still her house. Maybe, in her mind, it was. You really sent that email? She asked, voice shaking. Yes. You're seriously kicking us out? You think that's okay? Her tone cracked halfway between rage and disbelief. You had 2 years, Danielle. 2. You told me you'd start paying after 6 months. We were saving, she snapped. But then Luke's car got repossessed because he hadn't made payments in 8 months, I interrupted. She flinched. You don't have to throw everything in my face. I'm not. I'm just done pretending this is temporary. She looked at me like I'd just confessed to a crime. You're punishing me for what happened at brunch. That made me laugh. Quiet. Bitter. No. The brunch just reminded me what I already knew. You don't see me as family unless I'm paying for something. She crossed her arms, defensive now. You think you're better because you have a good job, because your boyfriend, because I pay my bills, I said, cutting her off. That's all. From the kitchen doorway, Evan's voice came calm but firm. Danielle, you need to go. This isn't a debate. The notice has been served. She turned on him. Stay out of this. This is between sisters. It stopped being just between you two the second you started depending on her, Evan said. His voice didn't rise, but it filled the room. Danielle's jaw tightened. Wow, you really let your boyfriend make your decisions now, huh? I took a deep breath. No, I just stopped letting you. Her eyes glistened. What about the kids, Doris? Where are we supposed to go? You should have thought about that before ignoring rent for 2 years, I said softly. This isn't punishment, it's reality. For a moment, she didn't say anything, just stared at me, trembling. Then she whispered, Mom's right, you've changed. You're cold now. I didn't bother correcting her. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Her car screeched out of the driveway, her kids silent in the back seat. Evan put a hand on my shoulder. That wasn't cold, he said. That was necessary. But when I sat on the couch afterward, tears burned my eyes anyway. Necessary doesn't mean painless. The next morning, my inbox was full. Subject lines like, please reconsider. Be the bigger person. Call me before this gets worse. By lunchtime, Mom called again. This time I picked up. Hi, Mom. Her sigh was heavy, rehearsed. Doris, you can't just evict your sister. What will people think? What will the kids think? That actions have consequences, I said quietly. Don't be sarcastic. You know your sister struggles. I know she manipulates. The silence on the other end stretched long enough to feel like static. Then Mom said softly, You've always had a hard time forgiving people. I smiled sadly. No, Mom, I just stopped mistaking forgiveness for submission. I hung up before she could reply. That night, Evan and I ate dinner in quiet relief until my phone buzzed again. A number I didn't recognize. Hello? This is Diane, Luke's mother. Her voice was syrupy, polite in that way only condescension can be. I just wanted to say this whole eviction thing seems a little dramatic. Couldn't you support them a bit longer for the children's sake? I closed my eyes. Mrs. Wilkes, I've supported them for 24 months. That's not a little longer. That's half a mortgage. Yes, but family should take responsibility for themselves, I finished, then hung up. Evan chuckled from across the room. You're getting good at this. At what? Not explaining yourself. 3 days later, the group chat lit up again. Cousins, uncles, relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, all parroting the same lines. You don't evict family. You're heartless. You've changed. Maybe I had. Maybe that was the point. Evan walked over, scrolled through the messages, and hit leave group. Just like that, gone. The peace that followed was instant. Still, that night, I caught myself staring out the window, half expecting Danielle's car to pull in again. It didn't. For the first time in a long while, the house was quiet. But quiet can be deceptive. Because beneath the silence, I could feel it. The storm wasn't over. It was just circling back for one last strike. The storm hit sooner than I expected. By Thursday morning, my phone lit up again. Not with calls this time, but with notifications. Mentions, tags, and screenshots flooding in from mutual friends. Danielle had posted a long, emotional Facebook status, a masterpiece of half-truths and omissions. Sometimes the people you help the most are the first to turn on you. My sister Doris evicted us with no warning. My kids and I have nowhere to go. I guess money really changes people, but we'll be okay. We always survive. She'd even attached a photo, her youngest asleep in a car seat, a blanket tucked around him. The caption, our new home for now. The comments were exactly what she wanted. That's awful. Your sister should be ashamed. You deserve better, girl. It took less than an hour for the narrative to shift from truth to tragedy. And in my family, image has always been more sacred than reality. Mom texted not long after. You saw her post, right? Maybe it's time to apologize before this gets out of hand. Apologize. That word sat like a stone in my throat. I called Evan, my voice shaking. She's playing victim again. Of course she is, he said evenly. It's her favorite role, but this time, don't audition for supporting cast. That night, I turned off all notifications and sat on the couch with a blanket, trying to breathe. The house felt heavier than usual, the silence thick. Then, knock, knock, knock. I froze. Evan looked up from his laptop. You expecting anyone? No. When I opened the door, Nate stood there. Hands in his pockets, expression somewhere between pity and judgment. Hey, sis. Nate, can we talk? I hesitated, then stepped aside. He sat down at the dining table, looked around the room like it was foreign territory. Mom's worried, he started. She says you're not answering her calls. I have nothing new to say. You kicked out Danielle, Doris, over brunch? Seriously? The way he said it, like it was an overreaction to spilled coffee, made my jaw tighten. It wasn't over brunch. It was over 2 years of unpaid rent, constant lies, and taking advantage of me. He scoffed. Come on, she's your sister. She's just going through a rough time. A rough time doesn't last 2 years unless you choose it. He leaned back in his chair. You think this makes you better than us? You've got your fancy house, your fancy job, It makes me tired, Nate, that's all. Tired of pretending everything's fine while I bankroll their lives. He rubbed his temples, exhaling sharply. You're really destroying the family over money. I met his eyes. No, Nate, I'm saving myself because they already destroyed it over entitlement. He didn't have an answer for that, just stood up and muttered, You've changed, before walking out. 2 days later, I got a voicemail from an unfamiliar number. The voice was smooth, professional. Ms. Young, this is Karen Blake, representing Diane and Luke Wilkes. We'd like to discuss a possible legal matter regarding emotional distress and displacement caused by your eviction notice. I replayed it twice before it sank in. Evan looked up from the sink when I told him. They're threatening to sue you? Apparently. On what grounds? Being entitled, I guess. He laughed, but I didn't, not fully. Because in my family, threats weren't about money or courtrooms. They were about control. By Monday, things escalated further. A group text popped up from Mom. Doris, please don't make this uglier. Luke's mother is very upset. Can we just meet and talk this through? Then, a separate one from Danielle. You're unbelievable. You think this is justice? You're ruining everything. You always were jealous of me. Jealous? Of what? A woman who refused to work, married a man who played video games all day, and lived rent-free on my dime? I stared at her text for a long minute before typing back, You mistake boundaries for jealousy and responsibility for cruelty. Then I blocked her number. By the end of that week, I'd had enough. I scheduled a meeting with a lawyer, not to fight, but to draw a line that couldn't be crossed. The office smelled faintly of paper and peppermint. My lawyer, Ms. Rivera, listened quietly as I explained everything, the unpaid rent, the guilt, the threats. When I finished, she said simply, You did everything right. I'll send a formal cease and desist to her in-laws and anyone who keeps contacting you. And if they push further, we'll respond with evidence. I nodded, but my chest still felt tight. It's not the lawsuit that scares me, I admitted. It's the fallout. Once I take it this far, there's no going back. You already went back too many times, she said. Now you're going forward. Something about that line stuck with me. When I got home, Evan was in the kitchen, slicing vegetables for dinner. He looked up and smiled gently. You did it, didn't you? Yeah. Good. Now let them deal with the silence they created. I leaned against the counter, finally exhaling. The air felt lighter, like the weight had shifted off my shoulders. But that night, lying in bed, I couldn't sleep, because somewhere deep down a small voice whispered, They won't stop until they destroy something. And I was right. By the time the weekend rolled around, I thought things might finally start to quiet down. But in families like mine, silence doesn't mean peace. It's just the inhale before another explosion. The next explosion came in the form of a knock. Sharp, impatient, like it had a right to be there. I opened the door and found Danielle's husband, Luke, standing on the porch in a wrinkled hoodie, sunglasses pushed up on his head. Hey, Doris. Luke, we need to talk. I didn't step aside. There's nothing left to talk about. Oh, there's plenty, he said, forcing a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. You think you can just kick out a family, your family, and walk away like some boss? You lived in my house for 2 years, I said evenly. Paid nothing. Lied about saving money. And now you're angry that I stopped? He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping. You really think this makes you the hero? People are talking, Doris. Everyone knows what you did. Good, I said. Maybe they'll finally stop asking me for favors. His jaw twitched. For a second, I thought he might actually yell, but then he smirked instead. You've always been jealous of Danielle. Admit it. She's got the charm, the family, the support, and none of the bills, I cut in. Now, if you'll excuse me. Before I could finish, Evan appeared behind me, his hand on the door. You should leave, he said calmly. Now. Luke stepped back, muttering something under his breath as he walked to his car. The engine roared, tires screeching as he sped off. I stood there shaking, not from fear but from anger. Evan wrapped an arm around my shoulders. They're trying to get a reaction. Don't give it to them. But I already knew what I had to do. That night, I sat at my desk and started deleting everything that tied me to them. The shared Netflix account, the emergency contact form at my doctor's office, the shared Google Calendar, the group chat labeled Family First that had always felt like Doris Last. Click, click, click. Each deletion was a small exhale of freedom. When I got to the shared investment account, one my dad had convinced me to open for family emergencies, I hesitated. There was over $12,000 in it, half mine, half the family's pool fund. I transferred my portion out, sent the rest back to the account origin, and closed it permanently. For the first time in years, I had nothing tied to them. The next morning, the phone started buzzing again. Nate, this time. "You really going to destroy our family over brunch?" he asked, his voice tight with frustration. I laughed softly. If one meal can destroy a family, Nate, maybe it was already broken. He didn't respond, just hung up. That was the last time I heard from him. Days passed quietly after that. Unnervingly quiet. Evan and I took a drive upstate just to get away. No Wi-Fi, no calls, no family. Just forest air and stillness. The first morning there, I woke up to sunlight filtering through the curtains. Evan was making breakfast, humming to himself. For the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't wake up tense. We spent the day walking trails, cooking, laughing. I almost forgot the chaos waiting at home, until my phone buzzed with a single voicemail notification. No caller ID. I didn't check it until later that night. Danielle's voice raw and trembling. "You win. We're leaving town. Don't worry. You won't have to deal with us again. Hope you're proud." There was a pause, then quieter, almost to herself. "You were supposed to be my sister." Then the line cut. I sat there for a long time, listening to the hum of the room. Evan looked over. "You okay?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "It feels like she's gone for good." "Then maybe that's what it took." I nodded, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like standing in the ruins of something that used to be whole, even if it had been built on lies. 2 weeks later, a certified letter arrived in the mail. It was from Diane and her husband, Luke's parents. A formal complaint. They were threatening to sue me for emotional distress and displacement of minors. Evan found me sitting at the dining table reading it twice. "You have to be kidding me." "They're delusional," I said flatly. "But fine, they want to make it official? I'll show them official." I called Ms. Rivera, my lawyer. Within hours, she drafted a response. Firm, precise, cold as steel. Any further contact from the Wilkes family will be considered harassment and dealt with accordingly. Cease all communication with my client immediately. The letter went out that evening. 24 hours later, their calls stopped. For the first time, the silence that followed didn't feel like punishment. It felt earned. The next morning, I made a small decision that somehow felt huge. I removed Danielle as my emergency contact, then Mom, then Nate. In their place, I listed Evan Ross, the one person who'd stood by me without demanding anything in return. As I typed his name, something inside me settled. It wasn't bitterness, it was clarity. When you're treated like a stranger long enough, you stop asking for permission to leave. That night, Evan cooked dinner. Pasta, candles, soft music. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. He reached across the table, took my hand, and said quietly, "You know, peace doesn't always come from fixing things. Sometimes it comes from letting them break." I looked at him, really looked, and realized he was right. For years, I'd thought setting boundaries meant pushing people away. But maybe it just meant making room for the right ones to stay. 3 weeks passed without a single call, message, or knock. No voicemails, no guilt trips, no flying monkeys sent by Mom to mediate, just stillness. At first, I didn't trust it. I kept waiting for the next accusation, the next emotional ambush. But it never came. Silence, as it turned out, had a sound of its own. Like peace, humming softly in the background of a life that finally felt mine. Then, one Monday morning, my phone buzzed. It was Mara, the property manager. "They're out," she said simply. "Moved quietly over the weekend. No mess, no damage, no note. Just gone." For a second, I didn't say anything. I'd imagined this moment 100 times. Angry, dramatic, maybe even tearful. But instead, I just whispered, "Thank you." Evan glanced up from the couch, reading my face. "They're gone?" "Yeah." He nodded slowly, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Want to see it one last time?" I hesitated, then nodded. We drove there that afternoon. The house on Birchwood Lane looked smaller than I remembered, maybe because it wasn't filled with chaos anymore. When we stepped inside, the air was still, faintly dusty. The smell of old carpet cleaner lingered. There were no toys scattered across the floor, no shoes by the door, just blank walls with faint outlines where pictures used to hang. I walked through each room quietly. The kitchen first, then the hallway, the kids' old bedroom. In the corner of the living room, a single plastic bracelet lay forgotten, pink and glittery. I picked it up and turned it over in my hand. It was tiny, too small for any adult wrist. A reminder that even when adults make terrible choices, kids are the ones who carry the ripples. Evan came up behind me, resting a hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said softly, just closing a door I never realized was still open. We stood there for a while, looking out the window at the front yard, the one I used to mow myself when Danielle's husband claimed he didn't have the right shoes for it. "You know," I said quietly, "I used to feel proud giving them this place. Thought it made me generous. But I think what it really made me was afraid." "Afraid of what?" Evan asked. "That without their approval, I'd have no place in the family." I laughed under my breath, shaking my head. Turns out I didn't need a place. I just needed peace. We locked up and left the keys with Mara. On the drive home, I didn't look back once. A week later, I listed the house. No staging, no renovations, no sentimentality. Just clean paperwork and clear terms. It sold in 10 days. Cash offer, no contingencies. When the sale closed, I transferred part of the money to my savings and used the rest to plan something I hadn't done in years. A trip. No family obligations, no guilt trips disguised as reunions. Just a week away with Evan. We picked Maine. Quiet cliffs, sea air, foggy mornings. The first night there, Evan fell asleep early, and I found myself on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the ocean. The waves crashed rhythmically, steady and merciless. Somewhere between the tide and the silence, I realized I didn't feel angry anymore. For so long, I'd mistaken anger for strength, the kind that says, "I'll show them." But real strength, I learned, is quieter. It's when you stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. I thought of Mom's last text. "You'll regret cutting your sister off. Blood is thicker than pride." But she was wrong. Blood isn't thicker than peace, and family isn't measured by DNA. It's measured by respect. When we got back home, I went through the last remnants of my old life, removed shared calendars, deleted old group chats, boxed up the last family photo that hung in the hallway, the one where everyone smiled except me. I didn't throw it away. I just put it in the attic where it belonged, part of the past, not my present. Evan walked in as I was closing the box. "You done?" "Yeah," I said, exhaling. "Completely." He smiled and pulled me close. "Good, because it's time you stopped carrying things that were never yours to fix." December arrived quietly that year. No Christmas cards, no brunch invites, no drama. Just still mornings, soft music, and coffee on the porch. One night, as snow started to fall, Evan asked, "Do you ever miss them?" I thought about it for a moment before answering. "No, I miss the idea of them, the version I used to hope existed." He nodded. "That's fair." We sat in silence, watching the snow gather on the railing. And as the world outside turned white and wordless, I realized something. It wasn't revenge that brought me peace. It was release. I used to think walking away from family meant failure, that I was abandoning something sacred. But now I see it differently. Walking away wasn't failure, it was freedom. Because sometimes the only way to find your place is to stop begging for a seat at someone else's table.